Let's dive into a catastrophic trade dispute that absolutely nobody saw coming. It all started with a really simple, almost arrogant assumption, and it spiraled into a full-blown national crisis. This is the story of how one political gamble revealed a hidden, and as it turns out, a totally critical American addiction to its neighbor up north.
And this right here, this says it all. This was the core belief, the mantra in Washington for decades, really. The idea that Canada was, for all intents and purposes, just a big resource depot for the United States. It was a deeply held assumption that America always held the winning hand.
But look, this wasn't just some minor error in political judgment. As we're about to see, this one single flawed belief was the direct trigger, the spark, for a crisis that would push the entire American economy right to the edge of a cliff.
Okay, so let's get right into how this all kicked off. The United States, well, it decided to play some serious hardball, fully expecting Canada to just fold its hand immediately. But they just fundamentally misread the entire situation, and the response they got was, well, it was anything but polite.
It all started with this. Executive Order 109. On January 25, 2026, the US just slapped a massive 25% tariff on literally everything coming across the border from Canada. We're talking energy, lumber, aluminum, you name it. The whole point was to force a trade renegotiation, but on America's terms. So what did Washington think was going to happen? Coming from the famously nice Canadians. Probably a phone call, right? Maybe a polite delegation showing up to ask for an exemption. What they got instead was a move that I promise you, nobody saw coming. That's right, no counter tariff, no drawn-out negotiation, just a complete and total shutdown. Canada invoked its National Strategic Reserve Act and just turned off the tap. Every single valve, every rail line, every truck, every shipment, it all just stopped, cold. And the impact wasn't some slow burn, oh no, it was instant. The American economy suddenly, severed from its #1 supply line, went into what you can only really describe as a cardiac arrest. The shockwaves were felt within hours, not days or weeks. This timeline just shows you the insane speed of this collapse. Within just 24 hours of that tariff, the ban is in place. And then just one day after that, gas prices in the American heartland jumped 80 cents. Overnight. That is how fast the entire system started to fail.
So the big question is why? Why did the system fail so catastrophically, so quickly? Well, it all starts with the dirty little secret of American energy. The whole idea of energy independence, it was about to be exposed as a really dangerous myth.
This slide explains the core problem perfectly. See, America produces tons of its own oil, sure, but it's what's called light sweet crude, the stuff that comes from fracking. Our huge, incredibly complex refineries, especially in the Midwest and along the Gulf Coast, they were built decades ago to process one specific thing, that thick, heavy, sour sludge that comes from Canada. You can't just swap one for the other. They're not compatible. And just look at this dependency. 70%. For the entire American Midwest, 70% of the oil their refineries need to make gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel comes from one single place, Canada. When that got cut off, those refineries basically started to starve to death. But wait, the energy crisis goes way beyond gasoline. America gets about 1/5 of its electricity from nuclear power. And here's the terrifying fact. The US produces almost zero domestic uranium. We have to import 95% of the fuel we need just to keep our reactors from shutting down. So after cutting off supplies from Russia, America's only secure, high-grade source for that uranium was right here, in Saskatchewan's Athabasca Basin. By starting this trade war, the US had effectively sanctioned its own nuclear power grid. It's a total checkmate move, risking rolling blackouts all across the eastern seaboard. Okay, so we've got the lights going out and the gas pumps running dry. But this crisis, it didn't stop there. Next, it came for the farms, it came for the factories, and yeah, ultimately, it came for your wallet. Just look at the sheer dominance on this slide. We're talking about potash. It's the key ingredient in modern fertilizer. An absolutely incredible 85% of the potash used by American farmers comes from one place, Saskatchewan, Canada. And guess where the other major sources are? Russia and Belarus. Not exactly reliable alternatives, are they? And the timing of this was just devastating. Canada halted the trains just weeks before the critical spring planting season. Without that fertilizer, American crop yields for corn, soy, and wheat were projected to plummet by as much as 40%. It was a completely self-inflicted agricultural disaster. So what does that mean for you? Well, analysts immediately started projecting the downstream effects on food prices. And in a world with 40% less grain, you're looking at a world where a Big Mac could easily cost $15 by July. The pain then spread like wildfire to manufacturing and even national defense. You see, Canada's cheap hydropower makes it the perfect place to smelt aluminum, and the US gets 70% of its aluminum imports from there. So all of a sudden, production of things like the F-35 fighter jet, the Ford F-150, and even the armor plating for military vehicles, it was all in jeopardy. But beyond the oil, the uranium, and the potash, Canada held one final piece of leverage, a strategic advantage that was rooted in pure geography. and it was capable of striking right at the very heart of the modern American economy.
This is the ultimate weapon: water. Canada literally controls the northern flow of major water systems, like the Great Lakes and the Columbia River. In a really prolonged dispute, they could just reduce that flow, crippling the hydroelectric dams and threatening the power supply to the massive data centers for companies like Amazon and Microsoft.
And this quote just brilliantly illustrates the sobering new reality. That core belief that financial power and military might were all that mattered, it had been proven completely wrong. In the real world, physical resources are king.
So what this all boils down to is a series of really dangerous strategic addictions. The US is addicted to the specific oil its refineries need, the uranium for its power plants, the potash for its farms, and the aluminum for its factories. And these are things you just cannot create out of thin air. You know, this quote really cuts right to the heart of the matter. For all of its incredible technological and financial power, a nation is only as strong as its access to the fundamental physical resources that actually sustain it. The digital economy, it turns out, runs on a very real, very physical world.
In the end, this whole crisis exposed the profound fragility of a superpower that just took its most critical supply chain completely for granted. It's a powerful, powerful reminder that geography is often destiny and that sometimes even your closest neighbor can hold all the leverage.